The art of vanishing in order to be wanted is rooted in one brutal truth. Nothing intensifies desire like a carefully controlled absence, and nothing suffocates it faster than constant availability. This is not about deception. It is about directing perception, about shaping another person's longing the way a sculptor chips away at marble until a hidden image emerges. In seduction, as in power, victory is never achieved through begging or by surrendering too soon. It is achieved through what is withheld, through what hurts not to have, through what can be sensed but never entirely owned. Machiavelli grasped this deeply. Though he wrote of politics and war, woven through The Prince is an unspoken manual on emotional strategy. The one who shows need gives away their advantage. The one who becomes rare acquires value, in love just as on the battlefield. The one who pleads has already lost the opening move. Cleopatra is a timeless illustration. It was not merely her beauty that ensnared two of Rome's most powerful men, but her command of mystery, her skill at orchestrating a rhythm of approach and retreat. She made her entrances when least expected, withdrew when most longed for, turning her presence into a gift and her absence into an exquisite torment. Inside the human heart lives a primitive reflex that reacts sharply to the possibility of loss. The brain does not distinguish much between a precious object and a meaningful gesture. It simply tags what is scarce as urgent and what is urgent as compelling. If you want to be wanted, you must learn to disappear with purpose. Become quiet at the precise moment interest peaks. Offer a smile and leave just before the emotional climax. Seduction is not an endless act of giving. It is an art of rationing, of becoming a question that refuses to resolve. Emotional investment is like a sweet poison. Draw others into pursuing you and you keep the reins in your hands. Chase them and you have already ceded your power. What few people recognize is that once love starts to feel like an exchange, it falls under the same invisible rules that govern all investments. Every attentive gesture, every unanswered text, every ambiguous glance is like placing a stake in the stock market of the psyche. The one who invests more becomes more attached. The one who pours out more becomes more entangled. And in this economy, the most entangled party is always the one in the weaker position. Here is where a Machiavellian idea appears, the concept of emotional debt. Do not rush to declare your feelings. Instead, evoke them in the other person. Do not say, "I love you." Instill in them the fear of losing you. Do not plead to be loved. Require them to earn their closeness to you, to work for it, to experience you as a privilege rather than an entitlement. Relationships that flare with immediate intensity often dim just as abruptly because they are like fires built from paper, bright and brief. The strategic seducer moves slowly, understanding that every detail matters and that each act of generosity should be preceded by waiting, observation, and a deliberate pause for doubt to grow. Consider the modern stage of social media. The person who constantly broadcasts their devotion is not truly seducing. They are asking for validation. The mind is wired to undervalue what is always on display. That is why when someone pulls back, stops posting, stops replying, they suddenly appear more powerful, fascinating, even dangerous. A hint of danger is compelling, and unreturned affection is the craft of leaving the door half open, but never swinging it wide, allowing someone to step in only far enough to feel how quickly they could be shut out. This is the law of psychological scarcity. In the market of desire, what floods the shelves loses value. What is hard to find becomes coveted. The same principles companies use to sell limited edition goods apply to longing. Something overabundant feels cheap. The mind equates rarity with worth. Limited, exclusive, carefully filtered access feels more valuable. That is why luxury items have waiting lists, and why a watch produced in small numbers commands a higher price. We have been conditioned to want what others cannot easily obtain, and the ego rarely seeks pure love. It seeks proof of being special. Nothing validates the ego more than winning the attention of someone who seems beyond reach. In seduction, this means you must construct a story of your own scarcity. Do not always appear. Do not always answer. Do not hand over everything you feel. Learn how to decline with grace, to postpone intimacy with gentleness, to let the other person sense they are on the verge of losing you precisely when they want you most. You may believe that blunt emotional honesty is enough to keep desire alive. It is not, because desire is not a logical faculty. It is rooted in our animal core. Instinct stirs in response to urgency, to obstacles, to rivalry, to the impression that you are someone others want, and you alone decide who gets near. Be the exception. Be the silhouette in the doorway, the figure half in shadow. Be the emotional rarity that everyone would like to touch, but very few are allowed to approach. Silence, when used deliberately, is a blade wrapped in velvet. In seduction, there is no more powerful roar than the deliberate quiet of someone withholding speech. A silence employed with purpose can accomplish more than 100 declarations of love. In the absence of words, imagination is forced to fill in the blanks, and imagination almost always produces something more intense than objective reality. Think back to times when a message went unanswered, when a look could not be deciphered, when a conversation ended without closure. Did your mind not orbit that moment, replaying it, reinterpreting it? That gripping mental loop is a kind of power. Anyone who learns to wield silence as a chosen tool instead of a reactive withdrawal holds a subtle kind of control. This is not about sulking or ignoring out of wounded pride. It is about pulling back your attention with the same care you might pull back a caress, with purpose, calculation, and elegance. The aim is to stimulate longing, not to breed bitterness. Words may entice someone into affection, but silence can edge them into obsession. Nothing excites the psyche more than someone who does not appear to need you, yet allows glimpses that they might want you. The paradox of attachment is that we often yearn most for what seems least dependent on us. This is the mask of apparent disinterest every Machiavellian seducer learns to wear. It is not true coldness or real indifference. It is a crafted aloofness. It means being there, but not fully available, offering warmth, but not dependency, signaling attraction, but never desperation. The heart of strategic seduction lies in coaxing the other person to put in effort, to question, to strive, to wonder, without ever looking as though you were waiting for their effort to arrive. Machiavelli once wrote that if a ruler must choose, it is safer to be feared than loved. In the realm of desire, this could be rephrased: it is better to be enigmatic than easily read. Certainty is consumed and grows dull. Uncertainty is chaste. Men and women who embody this poised non-neediness ignite intense feelings in others. Think of iconic fictional figures like James Bond or Don Draper. These are not moral role models, but as characters they illustrate this magnetic blend of self-sufficiency and limited access. They appear to lead rich, full lives without anyone's affection as a prerequisite, yet they leave room for others to fantasize about being granted entry. That tension is the snare. You can train yourself to become a similar hunter, like a fox pretending to limp in order to draw its prey closer. Sometimes the most potent gambit is to show one carefully chosen vulnerability, never all of them. Most people harm their own allure by overexposure, displaying every scar in the hope of eliciting compassion or deep connection. But seduction is not therapy, it is theater. You are not in a confessional, you are on a stage. Reveal one bruise, not your entire brokenness. Offer a single shadow in your story, and you awaken empathy. But like a strong medicine, vulnerability must be dispensed in tiny doses, enough to invite care, never so much that it invites pity. Once someone feels sorry for you, desire quickly evaporates. A feigned sacrifice can be used artfully as well. Make a small concession look like a big one. Let them believe they had to work to win your trust or time, even if you plan to give it all along. Never allow it to be obvious that you were easily available from the beginning. In Machiavellian politics, genuine power rarely shows itself openly. It wears the mask of frailty or need, while it calculates every move. The true seducer appears to open the doors of their inner world, but in truth only lets others see one carefully chosen room. The rest of the castle stays in the dark. You must absorb this. Desire is born at a distance. Fascination feeds on absence. In the strategic dance of seduction, Drawing someone in is only the first step. Making them miss you is the real victory. Neediness suffocates mystery, and mystery is the pulse of every obsession. When something is given too quickly, the memory of it rarely lingers. When it is withheld at a charged moment, it can transform you into a legend in someone's private narrative. There is a stark divide between the desperate lover and the invisible strategist. The desperate one uses words to plead. The strategist radiates a presence even when they are nowhere to be found. Used well, silence can be more seductive than streams of poetic confessions. Napoleon Bonaparte once observed that people can be more affected by the shadow of things than by the things themselves. If you truly want to captivate, you must learn to become that shadow, a scent that lingers but cannot be caught, an echo that refuses to die. One of the most frequent and fatal errors in seduction is staying too long, being too constantly there. Being always present is like repeating a spell again and again. It loses its magic and turns into background noise. But someone who departs just at the height of interest leaves a raw edge, an emotional vacuum. That emptiness becomes the hook you leave behind. Casanova, the legendary Venetian, grasped this and often left his lovers at emotional high points, not purely out of cruelty, but because he understood the potency of leaving longing unsatisfied. In this context, withdrawal becomes a kind of test. How much space do you occupy in someone's mind once you are no longer physically there? The psychology of absence shows that the mind replays unfinished scenes far more than completed ones. What is unresolved or unexplained tends to loop. This is why so many people find themselves fixated on the one who left rather than the one who stayed. Strategic absence is not the same as vanishing without cause. It functions more like a rest in a musical score, building tension and anticipation. Withdrawing your presence in a measured way creates a stage on which your return feels like an event, not a routine occurrence. The seasons illustrate this. Spring feels ecstatic after a long winter because the absence of warmth made it valuable. There is also what psychologists refer to as the Zeigarnik effect. We remember unfinished tasks more vividly than complete ones. Stories cut short, relationships without closure, promises that never materialize, these carve deeper grooves in memory. The Machiavellian seducer uses this bias like a blade. They understand that they do not need total conquest. They only need to interrupt the journey at the right point. By stepping back just as the other person is about to fully surrender, they lock that moment in the person's mind as a sweet wound, a melody that never resolves but plays endlessly inside. An old visual law says that things seen from a distance appear larger. Emotions follow a similar distortion. The farther away you are, the more room the other person has to imagine you, to project virtues onto you that you never explicitly showed. Up close, flaws become obvious. From afar you can be mythic. In allure, being a myth holds far more sway than being merely likable. Alchemists guarded their formulas not only to keep control but because they recognized that mystery kept people fascinated. Your own behavior should echo this. Show parts of yourself but not all. Speak your mind at times, but never explain everything. Come close but avoid being entirely transparent. Machiavelli grasped that power is rooted in how others perceive you, not solely in what you have. His advice to princes applies to lovers. Never present yourself as in need of anyone. Your strength is in appearing self-sufficient, like someone who does not crumble whether love arrives or not. The language of silent power is about seducing without pleading, influencing without physical contact. The one who asks outright is already kneeling. The one who waits passively drains their own strength. The one who stirs desire without asking for it, who steers interactions without overt control, is the one who truly captivates. This is not about chasing love, but about becoming so compelling that love comes toward you. For that, tools like silence, timing, and mystery are far more potent than endless speeches. Neediness tends to gush through language. Someone who over-explains, who labors to be understood, who tries to convince another of their worth, usually ends up diminishing themselves. There is a certain beauty in partial revelation, a natural authority in ambiguity, and a potent kind of desire in doubt. Those who are truly intelligent seldom parade all of themselves for immediate consumption. They know that real influence often resides in what is kept back. The person who speaks sparingly leaves the listener's mind free to roam, and whatever the mind imagines, it tends to exaggerate. That is why great seducers allow others to see only fragments, reflecting them like a mirror, showing just enough to suggest depth while withholding the full reflection. It is the empty spaces that activate imagination, and once imagination is engaged, the fantasy often eclipses reality. There are words that can cut, and silences that wound more deeply. A wise person knows that timing a silence well can be far more impactful than delivering a clever line. When you refrain from answering a message right away, when you do not justify your absence, when you deliberately allow others to wait, you are weaving emotional tension that can bind them. This is not cold silence meant to punish. It is charged quietude, intentional non-response, a strategic pause. In war, sometimes holding back an attack provokes the opponent more than direct aggression. In allure, sometimes not replying invites stronger interest than constant messages. An instant response may comfort someone. A delayed one can become a small event in their day. Some presences can overwhelm a room, demanding attention so loudly that they repel. Others sit quietly and yet draw people in. The difference lies in energy management. Someone who constantly demands to be noticed depletes fascination, while someone who embodies calm, self-contained attentiveness without striving for approval exudes rarity. They are like a subtle fragrance detected when you lean in, never a cloying scent that fills the whole space. In this method of seducing without need, your presence should be felt without loud announcements. Let people notice you without you constantly flagging yourself. Let your energy occupy the room softly. This arises from cultivating an inner sense of worth that does not depend on others' reactions. History is filled with examples of this seduction without contact, where individuals deeply affected entire audiences or intimate circles without overt displays. Think of someone like Marilyn Monroe. Beyond the overt glamour, part of her magnetism lay in the sense that some part of her was always elsewhere. Even when surrounded by people, she could feel emotionally distant, which made others lean in. Or modern figures whose unique style, quiet demeanor, or refusal to explain themselves fully makes them endlessly intriguing. Their charm is not in loud declarations, but in restrained presence. Psychologically, all of this plays on our theory of mind, our tendency to guess what others are thinking and feeling. The less you reveal, the more others are forced to speculate, and the act of speculation itself creates emotional involvement. Selective silence excites the parts of the brain that love puzzles. Someone who uses it well does not seduce through what they give, but through what they withhold. The intangible becomes the strongest aphrodisiac, and scarcity becomes your physical form of power. When attention is too easy to get, it loses its flavor. When it is doled out in measured doses, it becomes addictive. That is how slot machines keep people playing, and how intermittent notifications make social media so compelling. Any pattern that is not constant but unpredictable tends to hook people more deeply. The same is true of attention and affection. If your presence is always guaranteed, desire dulls. If your responses are sometimes warm and other times delayed, if you sometimes appear with depth and other times recede into your world, you create a cycle of anticipation and relief. That unpredictability works like an emotional slot machine. It is no coincidence that many great leaders, artists and writers instinctively manage their visibility. They show up rarely but meaningfully. Their appearances feel like gifts, not obligations, and that is part of why they remain unforgettable. The essence of all this is not to pretend, but to genuinely grow into someone who is whole enough not to need constant affirmation. Scarcity, then, is not a childish game. It is a reflection of the fact that your time and emotional energy are truly precious, and you will not hand them to just anyone. When you reach that point, you stop begging for love and start inspiring it.